Frankie Greenwood, whom we affectionately call Big Mama, despite her short stature. I'm reminded of her stoic but soft, gentle demeanor, how she and her sister, Aunt Marie, would love to see my dolls when I came to visit, how they laughed and humored me by setting out a bowl of milk once when I pretended to be a cat. I'm reminded of her dedication to family and the church, the sacrifices she endured with only a 5th grade education for each of my relatives here and myself to be alive and thriving today. It is here that we now honor her daughter, my grandmother's sister, Dorothy Smith, who served diligently and lovingly as one of the mothers of this church. I'm reminded of her and her sisters, Eunice and Johnny Mae, picking greens from her lush garden. I'm reminded of the palm of her hand waving goodbye as we drove away on the long driveway she shared with Uncle Alfonso. Their voices, so rich and distinct in my memory, still ring like wind chimes in my head when I'm here. Though I feel blessed to have this site as a point of homecoming, I'm fully aware that sadly many have been cheated out of this opportunity. One of the cruelest aspects of the Black American experience is the trauma from repeated attempts to erase and destroy every trace of our progress and existence. Examples of this are numerous throughout history, such as the damage committed to the prominent Greenwood district during the Tulsa race riots. Yet examples of Black cemeteries, which were specifically raised and built over, continue to come to light. The popular Lake Lanier outside of Atlanta, Georgia, was created in part on land that once held Black communities such as Oscarville. Fearful for their lives, residents fled due to targeted acts of racial intimidation and violence. What remained, including some of the unmarked graves of their ancestors, was eventually flooded to make way for the lake. The hidden history buried beneath the surface still haunts the waters to this day. As recently as December of last year, Clearwater, Florida officials unearthed a Black cemetery buried beneath an office building, the 4th of which had been discovered in recent years within the state. In each case, residents were told that graves had been relocated, only for hundreds of bodies to be found by archaeologists. So in other words, they lied about relocating bodies. One woman involved in recovery efforts commented that it was like the skeletons were looking up at me saying, "Thank God you found me." These and other countless instances of history being erased, neglected, buried, and stolen make this ancestral site here at Corinth that much more precious to me. It reaffirms the fact that being good stewards of this site and its history is not only a privilege and a ministry, but that the act of Black memory and reverence is a revolutionary act in the face of those who would leave us forgotten.
I hear you.
Love, that of our ancestors, and that we return back to them through the care of their final resting places is a revolutionary act, and we owe it to the generations after us to maintain this connection to our resilient origin. That's why when I need to remember who I am and the powerful legacy that I belong to, I come here.
Yes.
In 2007, prior to studying abroad in Thailand, I came here to ask God to grant me traveling grace on my journey, for Him to grant me the strength of my ancestors to overcome fear and restore me in their pride and love. As I was driving away, I stopped right there on that road leading up, and I gathered some dirt along the road in one of my grandmother's mason jars, so that I could always have a piece of home with me, to know that I had a home to come back to. Somehow, that jar of dirt made it all the way to Thailand, to Pitsanalak in Bangkok, Thailand, along with the quilt that my Dot had given me that same day that I collected that dirt. When I graduated with my master's, I came here and I stood between the gravestones of my formerly enslaved relatives with my oldest daughter, Iris, on my hip, reading their names in her ear. This here was Peter. This was Molly. This was Frank. This was Mary. This was Frankie. By the grace of God, this is how we came to be here.
Yes.
This is how our dreams became possible. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And just like I said, I know you all, some of you have seen it, but these are just some pictures, and I can leave it up. This being Frank and Mary, who are also buried out there. This is from the day that Grandma and Aunt Dot and Aunt Jenny Mae were picking those greens out at Aunt Dot's house. I'll never forget that. This is me in Thailand, and this is the quilt that Aunt Dot sent me with. So it was on my bed. You can't see the jar there, ain't no telling where it was, but that's the quilt. And this is me on the day that I got my master's, that I came and stood between those two gravestones, which was such a powerful moment for me. And that's me and my baby right next to Big Mama's grave. So I'm just so grateful to be a part of this legacy and to be able to speak to y'all today. Thank you.